Dear listeners, welcome to Out of the Box Talks, where we dive into various pressing issues and innovative solutions, offering insights and strategies for meaningful change. In today's episode, we'll look into the profound meaning of the word impact beyond its surface, understanding the inner meaning of the word impact. Impact signifies the deep meaning and lasting change that we aspire to create in our communities. Today, we have with us our guest, Ms. Sharon Weir, is a distinguished development professional with an MSc in Developmental Studies from the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. In 2010, she co founded the Fourth Wheel Social Impact, where she has overseen over 100 research, evaluation, and communication projects for diverse clients, including government departments, NGOs, corporates, and impact investing firms. Her expertise spans critical domains such as education, health, livelihoods, water, sanitation, women's empowerment, and corporate sustainability. She is an accredited Level 1 Social Value Associate with Social Value International and a certified social auditor by the National Institute of Securities Markets for the Social Stock Exchange. Join us as Sharon shares her insights on understanding impact and how thoughtful initiatives can create meaningful and lasting change in our communities. So glad to have you here with us, ma'am. We are also delighted to introduce our host for today's episode, Mr. Pasupati, Manager of Impact Assessment for United Way of Chennai. Over to you, Mr. Pasupati.
First of all, I would like to thank you for accepting our podcast out of the box talks. To start this conversation, I would like to request you to please give a brief about yourself and what inspired to start Fourth Wheel Social Impact.
Sure. Thank you so much, Pashpati, and thank you for the introduction, Trifina. Yes, to really quickly start, I'm Sharon, as all of you have been introduced to me. I think we started the Fourth Wheel 14 years ago now. This year we celebrate our 14th year. And when me and my co-founder Payal, we had just finished our masters, both of us studied abroad. And when we came back home, I think a lot of what we had seen was there was a lot of focus on NGOs, on government, on international aid, etc. But there was really no conversation of the private sector. And what led us to kind of see through our research, we were development researchers, was that there is only philanthropy. It's not CSR was not viewed as a strategic way of creating change, and that's why we call ourselves Fourth Wheel, which is basically the fourth wheel is adding to NGOs, government, and international aid organizations. So that's how we kind of started. We were very young in our careers, so we started a lot with reporting. We traveled the length and breadth of the country, doing research, writing, doing qualitative research, writing annual reports, case studies, etc. After a few years, we then kind of became very focused on baselines. So, where are you starting from? What is your starting point? And we started doing a lot of baseline studies, helping CSR clients to really, have a data-driven approach to why are they doing certain programs, right? Why education? Why computers in education? Or why health? And why maternal health? So I think we started with bringing in the data vision, and then CSR became a law. So much to our luck, CSR became a law. Corporate started, again, started thinking about, okay, how should this look? How should we move beyond philanthropy? And after a couple of years, again, we transitioned to start looking at impact assessment. So we said, don't write a report just because you want to publish it, on an external platform. Use and collect data because you want to do something with it. So we started focusing a lot on impact assessments. Then we realized that impact assessment became an afterthought. Okay, we've done the program. Now let's, go and see what happened. So then again, we transitioned and evolved to say impact assessment should be a very core part of your program design. And so now at Fourth Wheel, we don't just look at, reports, we don't just look at baseline, we don't just look at an afterthought of an impact study. What we're trying to do now is institutionalize impact measurement with an organization. That it's not viewed as just an audit or something you do, after a program is done. It's very much an integral part of how you design your programs, how you keep tracking whether you're having the change that you wanted to achieve. And that's where we are today. Impact assessment is a very core part of what we do, and it's we our mission is to ensure that organizations, whether big, small, medium, they view impact as a very core part of their strategy. So long explanation, but yes, that's kind of where we are and what we do at Fourth Wheel.
Okay, congratulations for stepping to the 14th year.
Thank you.
And could you please tell us about what are the projects you have worked in the past? What do you think about the impact assessment during that period?
Sure. So I think we've worked with multiple kinds of stakeholders. So we've done government projects, for example, with National Skill Development Corporation when they just kind of come up with the Skill India program. We've also worked with a host of NGOs, large scale, small scale. We work with, and of course, CSR projects. When it comes to impact assessments and the kind of studies we've done, no one size fits all, right? You can't. So we have a range of different impact assessment studies that we do. This could range from a social return on investment study. This could range, like I was saying, on post-program evaluations. We also are engaged with a lot of corporates now, like I said, at the start of when they are designing their program, right? So we've done a lot of longitudinal studies. We've done a lot of comparative studies. So I think the our body of work is quite diverse in terms of the kind of projects. A lot of times, different organizations need different things. So, for example, there are three ways we look at the work at Fourth Wheel. So one is impact strategy, right? So when you're starting off a project, what are your goals? And I guess we'll talk a little bit about that during this conversation. But it's very important to say what are your goals, right? So we help organizations set up their theory of change or their outcome frameworks. Sometimes organizations already have that, but it's very complex, right? So from the board member to your people who are implementing is very difficult to understand, right? So who's made the theory of change would understand it, but it's difficult to understand across these layers. So one thing is we help organizations build impact strategy. The other piece, the second piece is impact management, right? So now you have your goals, you have your tools, you have your indicators, but what we do is we help you find the right technologies. And I'm sure there'll be questions on, technology is too expensive, no one understands it. So we help organizations make it easier to digest and set up, technology systems. We help them build the right tools. So there's an impact management. We help them visualize data, right? It's great to collect data. How do you use it? So in impact management, we also work on dashboards, on looking at real-time data. And the third and the core of our work is impact assessment, which is basically what I just spoke about, doing actual studies to see whether, the goals you set out for yourself are there or not. So that's an overview of how we approach or how we work with different kinds of stakeholders in the social sector and the kind of services we offer. Yeah.
Wow, that's very insightful. Thank you for sharing that. The next one is about the how can we assess the impact. It's about when we do the projects, it's we usually do the impact assessment within the 3 months of project completion because of some donor requirements, audit process, funding process, which is doesn't measure the impact rather than the outcome. It only measure the outcome, not the impact. So how can we do the assessment for a longer term, for instance, after 1 year or after 2 years? How can we do that? How it will be helpful to us?
Sure. So I think one thing that we have to keep in mind, right, is that impact assessment is not just for donors. Impact assessment is for your communities. Impact assessment is for your program teams. Impact assessment is for your leadership. So, a lot of times, most organizations think it's just a reporting tool. And that's where the problem lies, right? So I think the first thing to, kind of keep in mind is that first of all, we need to, break down these jargons. Like every time, I'm talking to some organizations or teams, I ask them, what is your impact goal? And they would be like empowerment, right? But I'm sure if I ask you what empowerment means, or if I ask Rafina what empowerment means, it's going to mean very, very different things. So I think the first part is break down these big concepts, right? Empowerment means what? So empowerment could mean, if you're working with community groups, it means that the community groups have the knowledge, right? To take some action. First of all, to recognize a problem, to understand what actions you can take, and then to be able to take those actions, which could be, how do you access government schemes? Now, so what I'm trying to say here is it's very important to have the right metrics, right? Now, when you have these big metrics, empowerment, it doesn't happen in 3 months, right? You're not going to have these big level changes in 3 months. So I think the way we convey to our program teams, to our communities, to our donors is very, very important. So the first thing, if someone tells you, give me a report after 3 months of what you have done with the community, is to say that empowerment is not 3 months. Empowerment, and how can you do that? By having the right metrics, right? That if I want a group to actively start participating, if I want people to actually get government schemes access, right? It is going to take this much time. But now to convey a message, you need to have it figured out yourself, right? So if you tell, so that's number one. So, move away from these big jargons to actually come up with indicators you can measure, then put timelines to them. Now it's very fair, and even a lot of organizations ask us, right? But we have to give this report in 3 months. It's fine, but you have to be cognizant to say, if you want to fund this for a longer time, then let's collect, we will only be able to collect data on outputs, not even outcomes, right? On outputs. And if you fund us for this period of time, for a longer period of time, this is where we can bring that change. So number two is, how do you communicate with the right metrics, right? So first, develop the right metrics. Number two, communicate the right metrics. And that way, again, if you don't look at it as a reporting measure, and you look at it, a lot of times, impact is looked at as a proving game. My program has worked. You have to look at it as an improving game. Where has your program worked? Where has it not worked? In this much time, what have you been able to achieve? In a longer time, what can you achieve? So I think these small pieces of having the right language, communicating it simply, and creating these timelines would help to drive that the assessment of impact better.
Thank you for that clarification. We all know that impact assessment will help us to understand the reach of the project, and it shows the transparency and credibility of how the organization it's implementing. And apart from that, how does the impact assessment benefits for individual level, community level, and policy level in
Sure.
your thoughts?
Yes. So I think, a lot of times impact reports are only read by M&E teams, you know. And why? Is because it's 100-page document, right? So if you want to, and a lot of times, I just did a very large study on looking at M&E practices across NGOs, right? And while we include our communities, or all of us want to, design programs with the community in mind, we don't take data back to the community. So if and the gold, that you can get from community when they look at the data, and you don't need to take a 100-page report. If your 3 or 4 indicators are, I want groups to be active. I'm just going to take this example of community groups. I want the groups to be active. Attendance should be a certain way. I want them to take certain actions. If you take this back to the community and say, we have not been able to get everybody on these groups, so then the community will tell you, all right, the timing is not correct. And we've done this a lot, that the when you have the meetings, the timing is not right, and that's why there's no attendance, or people are not seeing the value in these community groups that you have formed. Then we work on how do you improve the value as is viewed by communities. So I think for impact assessment, it's not a reporting tool. Like I said before, it's not a proving that my program works. It is
Okay.
how can I improve my program. So taking back data to communities will help to improve programs, number one. For program teams, now a lot of times program teams view impact assessment as an audit. you know Someone's going to come, someone's going to judge me, I should be very careful on what I
Exactly.
say. Why? Right? Why is that happening? Is because people don't see this bigger picture, that impact is not just to say a tick mark. So I think moving the mindset of program teams, right, that we are all in this together. And I always tell my team this, anyone in the social sector is not here, has a heart, right? They are here because they want to make change. So it's a very big misconception that oh, program teams are not doing this. I think these are the 5 things that are not working. That collaborative mindset is something that we can do through impact assessment, right? Take this data back, say, okay, this is great, these are 4 things we need to improve on. How can we improve, right? Rather than saying these 4 things have not happened and you need to improve. So that's the second thing, right? With program teams, you have to take a collaborative approach. And again, from a leadership perspective, I come back to my point of 100 pages. Our reporting and our communication has to have, there is a thing called so what, right? 50% people have rated our program very high. So
Mm.
what, right? So I think what the leadership wants to see is, um, what do I do with this information? What are my next steps? A lot of times our dialogue stops at data, right? There is no use of data. Based on the data, what are you going to do? What is the decision you are going to make? Are you going to stop the program? Are you going to redesign the program? Are you going to scale the program, and why? So I think, to answer your question, with communities, we need to take the data back as a solution to improve our program design. With program teams, we need to have this collaborative mindset, again, to redesign, to stop, to make some decisions. And at the leadership level, every data point should have an action point. So not just reporting data, taking action. Then it becomes the true picture of harnessing the value that impact assessment can bring to an organization.
Okay. Okay. I would like to move to the technical aspects right now. What do you think about LFA and theory of change, which will provide a clear track and view of the project and the impact assessment? What are your thoughts on these frameworks?
Yes, I think frameworks are very important, extremely important. But I also want to point out that a theory of change is not for everybody. Sometimes programs are so lean that you don't need to go into the depth of things. You can use an outcome map, right? Just list out what kind of changes you want to bring. A log frame is also very important because it gets, why is it important? Let me start with that actually. So most times, again, what I'm talking about, right? 3 layers. A log frame helps everyone to have the same picture.
Mm.
Like I do a lot of training programs with small NGOs, CSR, etc. And I always start my session by saying, what is social impact? What change do you want to bring through your work, through your, and the same people who see each other every day will come up with completely different things they want to do, right? So one will say, I want to change mindset of the community. One will say, I want to empower the community. One will say, I want to work on education. What does theory of change, log frames, what do these frameworks help us do? Everybody is on the same page. No one is thinking of impact differently. So I think the why it's important is it brings different stakeholders together, right? Unfortunately, log frames theory of change is just used at the time of proposal, and then everyone forgets about it, right? And then again, when you have to report back, everyone says, oh, let's go back to that and see. Now that's a major problem, right? Because a log frame is not just for, writing in a proposal and or putting it at the start of your program design. A log frame is your Bible. A log frame or a theory of change is what should be your North Star, your guiding light of what tools you make, which kind of people you speak to, what kind of data points you will get, and most importantly, decision making, right? So if in my log frame I say I'm going to reach so many people, let's take a skill program. I'm going to train 5,000 youth, which is my output. From 5,000 youth, I will do a technical test, right? So they will have improved knowledge. Because of improved knowledge, they get higher placement, right? And then they stay in their job, which is a sustainability aspect. Now, at every level, there is data coming in, right? So again, I need to see, okay, placement rate is only 20%. Is it linking back is it linking back to the knowledge increase, right? The people who have more knowledge are staying on in jobs longer or are sitting for placements. So what I'm trying to say here is, one, of course, frameworks bring everybody on the same platform. But the second thing is it gives us data to then make decisions. Again, everyone is looking at the same thing. So that's kind of why I think it's very important. And also, I would like to, end this with saying theory of change is probably not right for everyone. Log frame is probably not right for every program. Outcome mapping is not. So it's very important to also see the kind of framework you are using. And again, from my experience, I've seen that sometimes organizations are now using a lot of already set up government systems. Example, in education projects, now there is a Shala Siddhi framework, right? That gives you indicators, that talks about where you should be collecting data, what kind of outcomes, outputs you should be looking at. So even using something like that, which is already established, which gives you indicators, is also a very acceptable way to do impact measurement. So, most people think frameworks means let's make a theory of change, but I don't think that's how, it should be viewed. You should select frameworks which are contextually relevant to your mission.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one question actually related
Oh,
to established indicators. Do we have any established indicators for non-communicable disease in healthcare to assess the
Yes.
impact? Yeah.
Yes. So, Mohammed, again, non-communicable diseases, it really depends on the context, right? We are working in rural area, urban area, peri-urban. So you can use, World Health Organization has some things. Even in fact, in the Indian context, you would find some frameworks. So to be honest, I won't be able to tell you this is the right framework because it has to be context specific, right? Which non-communicable disease, with which
I'm
kind
looking
of
at cancer actually. Yeah,
in
cancer
cancer.
when it comes to pediatric cancer.
Correct. So, I mean, again, I won't be able to be very specific on, what is the right framework. But again, you do need to go back to what global frameworks exist. Very important. Global frameworks is difficult to contextualize. So, looking at, what is our Indian context, who have done certain things. So, I mean, I won't be able to tell you this is the framework for, cancer or pediatric cancer. But I'm sure if you look at similar organizations or similar entities in the health sector, you will find. But again, very important is to contextualize. You might not be able to use all the indicators in that framework. So what do you have to be very precise in picking the right ones, right, which suit the activities you do.
Correct. Thanks.
No problem, Mohammed.
Sustainable Development Goals indicators, how important it is to align with the SDG indicators and our impact indicators?
Right. So again, if you look at most of the reports in the sector right now, they will put a picture of the relevant SDG. So let's take Mohammed's example. They will put, the green picture of SDG 3, health, and they will say aligned with SDG. That's not alignment, right? So just again, let me be a little solution focused. What you need to do is, first of all, it's very important to answer your question. But there are 169 indicators developed by the UNAEG, which is the SDG, who have developed the SDGs. They have given 169 indicators across these, different SDGs, right? So the first thing you will do is, let's take Mohammed's example. If you're looking at, particular, say, cancer among pediatric cancer, you will look at which are the relevant actual indicators, not the SDG photo, right? So which are the actual indicators that you can, give data on. Now, these are very high level indicators. It could be access to, to referral. It could be multiple things, right? So first of all, pick up those, then contextualize them, right? Make them a little more local. Now, that's fine from a global thing. You can report, especially if you have international agencies. But what is more important is, what data is our government collecting? What data is already there? On what indicators they are collecting? At what level they are collecting? Is it national? Is it regional? So I think also then we need to look at these national indicators. And most times there would be, already existing data. People have this misconception that all our data in India is dated. That is no longer the case in our country. If you look, you will find relevant data. Okay, the census is still to come out, but census is not what we are looking for. There are specific government departments like WASH, right? Water, Health and Sanitation have very good indicators on, the government portals. Niti Aayog has now come up with, village development indicators, where you can actually look at scores at each village level, regional level. So important to also look at, national indicators.
Okay.
And then you need to marry these two together, put in your context, and that gives you a good framework, contextualized local framework for you to work with. So global is great, but it's not just, just putting at and saying we look at health. It doesn't do anything for you, right?
Yeah, that's very understandable. Thank you for that. Next is my favorite part. What is the most feasible or suitable way of disseminating the impact results to the stakeholders or the outer public?
It's my favorite part too, actually. But I think, like, again, spanning the 15, 16 years I've been in the sector and, worked with all levels. Like, I have worked very extensively with community members, with program teams through training, and of course with leadership, right, to build design strategy. Now, it's the problem with 100 pages, 60 pages, boring, right? Boring. Like, you have your graph and then you're saying the same thing in content, right? Where is the so what question? So what that it is 80% or 20%? So the first thing is, we need to, for any data we put out, we need to answer the so what question. Number two is, what is good to have and what is important to have. We need to break that down. So if you are collecting data on 100 points or 50 points, please stop, right? Think about what is going to help you actually top a program, scale a program, or redesign a program. Which are the top things to do? So when you're disseminating information, that's number one you need to have. Don't report everything, because no one is going to care, right?
Yes.
Report things that people care about. Now, how do you do that? First of all, you need to segment who is your reader. A community group would have a very different kind of need for information than a program team. A program team would have a very different need for information than a leadership team. Okay. So first of all, you need to also think about who is your audience. What data is needed for that audience? And lastly, which way will they consume information? I have seen making small videos works beautifully. And we are going to actually at Fourth Wheel, we have now started pitching to a lot of clients that we'll give you your report. That's fine. You need it. But we are going to make you a 2-minute video on what was the program, what was the research question, what did you want to answer, what was the result, and what decision to take. So I would say number one, tailor the information, use videos, right? It's not very difficult right now to make videos. Number two is to start using short form content. LinkedIn carousels are a great way to do that. Some examples of who does this quite well is 60 decibels. They just take 4 or 5 points, and then they just talk about these 5 indicators for the particular stakeholder with a call to action. So that's very important. I also feel, when people are now reading, like you think of us, right? When we are on, say, Instagram, or if we are looking at, podcasts, we are not interested in long stuff, right? We are interested in things which look pretty, things which have strike a chord with our heart, which is personal, right? And which is short and with a call to action. So I think development also should be viewed like that, right? Why do we see development communication as something which is boring, only talking about sad stories? Another very, I mean, I'm sure if anyone here has heard me before, this is my favorite thing, right? Look at case studies. If I pick up 5 case studies from different organizations on the same activity, I will not be able to tell if this is organization A, B, or C. All case studies look the same, right? It's the same for years. So how can you make that better? You make it more personal. You get people to tell their stories. So I love this form of participatory photos, right? So you go to a community, you give them cameras and say that this activity was done. Take 5 pictures of how your life has changed because of this. Or sometimes you can do participatory video. Give the power of communication to your communities as well, to your program teams as well. You will see beautiful information if you move this communication job out of a communication person's hand, right? So yeah, like lots of thoughts on that, but short form content tailored to stakeholders, and with a call to action. Why are you saying this data? Or why are you saying this thing, and what do I do about it? Would help comms make it much more interesting and beautiful.
Cool. That's very interesting. Actually, I like your idea. I'm going to adapt that, making it 2 minutes videos for all the projects and utilizing case studies, as you mentioned. Uh, I would like to discuss the impact plan that start from the proposal and end with the disseminating the results. How do you work on that? What is your process? Can you please provide some elaborate thoughts on that?
Sure. So I'm going to take you through, like, some sort of a cycle. So the first thing we do is bring different people together, right? It doesn't necessarily mean in the same room. A lot of times we have discussions with communities at one point. We have, discussions with program teams. We have discussions with leadership teams, right? So the first part is to define impact. Like I started our conversation, right? When everyone's saying empowerment, how will you measure empowerment? So the first thing we would do at Fourth Wheel is to create a framework, right? Now, framework will have your outcome goals, and from your outcome goals, you will create indicators. Now, I'd also like to bring up this idea of lean data by Acumen Academy. I recommend everyone does that course. It's a very short, simple course by Acumen Academy, which talks about lean data. How do you move from 50 indicators, which everyone would love to have, to 10, which actually is giving you something? So we then look at a lean data approach to design indicators. From your indicators, you will build your tools, right? So if you want to know about, if in an empowerment frame, that, I want to see how many people were able to go to the government office and apply for a government scheme. Then I will build my tools around the indicators. Based on the tools that you design, you will then do sampling, right? It's very important to have not just people who are around your area, but talk to the more marginalized, not just talk to males, but talk to females, not just talk to females, but within females, there are so many stratifications. So, number 4 would be sampling. Who do you talk to, right? Once this is set up, this is all part of your impact strategy. Once your impact strategy is set up, don't leave it in your folder and never look at it again. You need to then make it live. How do you make it live? You go back to your program teams, you go back to your communities, and you tell them that these are the data I'm going to collect over the next 1 year. And you try to give them small pieces to involve them. You give them technology. Now, everyone who's here or everyone who's going to be listening, please move away from paper pen. It's 2024. And, there is a myth that it's too expensive, it's too difficult, and, we can solve for those problems. But then you bring in technology, right? How do you collect data and how does it come immediately for you to make decisions? One thing that we hear a lot is by the time data comes to us, program has ended, right? So that's, yes, and that's horrible. So what we then do is set up teams, train teams, and build a system, right, to get this data in using technology. And then once the data comes in, we make dashboards. So again, if you see a lot of the dashboards, you can't understand anything, right? Sometimes program teams only can't explain what have they done, right? So how do you make, so that's what we will do then, that we make it easy for program teams to understand, communities also, if they want to look at it, to understand, what change has been brought. This happens on a regular basis, on a regular cycle. And then we plan for the assessment study. Now, the assessment study, again, I always recommend, don't just bring in external consultants like us. We never come in and do the project, give you a report and go. For us, it is very important that the data is collected in collaboration with program teams. So while we can do the heavy lifting and fill the forms and all of that, we have our teams or other program teams play a very a partnership role with us to get that data. And then it's about, like I mentioned, once you get the data, how do you take out the 5 most important things to circle back to your objectives and say we achieved it or didn't achieve it? So that's an overall sort of life cycle of how we approach impact assessment, and how we don't do assessment, but we capacitate teams and organizations to do it, so that after some time we are just there to hold your hand. We are not coming with our stick in our hand and saying, did you do this or did you not, right? So that's our rationale and our belief that that's sustainable then. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing the process and also suggesting the Acumen Academy's course. I already did that. Thank you for suggesting that. I would
Oh,
like
you
to
did
move.
that.
Yes, yes. I would like to move to the next technical part, which is the data collection. What are the major data collection challenges you have faced? Mostly, we face the language barrier issue or lack of human resources in the out. Especially when we do the projects in out of Tamil Nadu, especially in the North India. What is your challenges you have faced so far?
Sure. So I think number 1 is tool design, right? It's people think of it as something very simple. You ask a question, how difficult can tool design be? But it's a science in itself, and even now I cannot say I'm an expert in tool design, because for every project we do, we learn something new. So I think the first piece is, when you are making your tools too long, because that creates fatigue among community, creates fatigue among people collecting the data. So biggest challenge, one of the big challenges is very long tools, right? And you can solve for that by what I've been saying before. just talk about things that really matter, right? A lot of people say, and a lot of clients sometimes tell us, oh, please ask this, this will also be helpful. Sometimes we'll use it. So, that's number one. And number two is using the right technology. Moving from paper pen, because when you use paper pen, there is 1,000 things that can go wrong. Time is crazy. So, once you get the right tool, then using the right platform to collect data.
Okay.
With language, I think we have actually, I would like to say that we have solved for it with a couple of ways. So one is, once we made our tool, once we have it ready, we don't go into the field. What we do is, we first talk to the program teams. Now, if we are looking at an agriculture project, the unit of measurement, is it mand, is it biga, is it acre, differs from one village 10 kilometers away, different village. So I think what we do is, we work collaboratively with program teams, that what it is called in this area, what will people understand. People don't do that. They say, oh, this is such a simple concept. Acre is acre. And then people collect all different kind of units, and then you are spending 2 months cleaning that data. So first solution for local dialect languages, work with your program teams to contextualize your tool. Number two is, we always, it might not be 100% of our data collection team, but we always have people, local youth, local community members help us collect data. So it helps with rapport building. It helps with making sense of what people are saying. So, if we have, like, say, a budget to get local enumerators, we always spend a good amount of budget on getting local people, training them, capacitating them to then run surveys along with us. We also sometimes use this very nicely to compare, like, this set of local field workers data is saying this, whereas this is saying this. Is there any discrepancy? In the first 2-3 days only we do that. So then we can see, okay, there is a lot of cross learning with the community. So that's worked very well for us. Another thing that we use a lot, and again, only possible with technology, is audio audits. Some questions are very complex, right? Or if you're asking about experiences. Also, there's an issue of enumerator bias. How you ask the question and how I ask a question can be very different. But some questions are very crucial. So for the first few days, we keep audio audit. So every time that question comes, automatically it gets recorded. So someone's sitting in the back end in our team. We have very strong monitoring teams. So they will listen to these audio audits. Are they asking question correctly? Are community understanding? Then we will go back and train, the team. So that's also something that helps us a lot. And last, and again, solution focused, which really has helped us a lot, is enumerator notes. Now, till today, we have had this template with us forever. Till today, you will have, rate this school or rate this health institute. They will write 4, and then you'll say, please give detail why you have given 4. Very good. Good. Okay. Excellent. So we need to train our teams to what questions they need to think. Why did you rate it like that? Because sometimes there can be data discrepancies. Someone says in one survey, I don't have land. And then he has answered all the land questions. Right?
Which is not even relevant to the participant.
Correct. So enumerator notes helps a lot in this, because what we have done is, we give enumerators these 3 or 4 questions. Okay. That at the end of each interview, answer these 3-4 questions and write qualitatively. Now we can always go back and see those tools and clean our data. So, getting enumerators also to understand what you are doing, why you are doing, and then writing short notes is very good. Otherwise, you will end up with, okay, very good, nice, which is not what we want, right? So I think those are different ways that we ensure that data quality is good. And honestly, I have a whole training on data quality, so I'm not going to get into the details, but yes, it's very important, because if you're making decisions, then data quality is important, and you need to take the right actions for that.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Next, I would like to talk about the misconception the stakeholders have on impact assessment. We mostly come up with the misconception that the impact assessment can be done immediately after the completion of the project. What are the misconceptions you have uh, faced so far?
Right. So I think I don't feel I agree with the fact that you can't measure impact in a year. I feel that you can't measure certain things in a year. If you're looking at your broader impact goal as being poverty alleviation, or as knowledge attitudes practices, or as these bigger terms, that's not possible. But if you want to look at smaller wins, it's possible. So let me start with a few uh, misconceptions. Number one is you cannot measure these broad goals in a year. You can measure smaller things. So let's recognize that, right? Most times people come and say, okay, we've given this, let me take some example. We've set up these, say, science labs or something. And now, all the kids are going to be engineers. They are in ninth standard, right? So what can I measure? I can measure aspiration, that in the baseline, no one wanted to do a STEM related higher education course, but now they want to. That's good enough. So I think that's number one, right? Like, don't set these lofty goals which you can't measure. Set goals that you can measure. um Number two is this misconception that इससे क्या होने वाला है? It's merely a formality, I just want to go and upload it on my website. So it is not a formality like what we have been discussing. It is used to actually make deeper impact. How? By using data to make a decision. So I think that's another thing, right? People don't view it as decision making. They view it as, and I think I said this the fourth time, it's a proving game, not an improving game. That's big problem as well. This also brings me to my third point of what is impact assessment called right now. It's called monitoring, evaluation, and learning, right?
Yes.
And people love monitoring because you can tell someone, yes, no, you are right, you're wrong, whatever. People like evaluation because it gives you a report and probably more donors. But the learning is completely missed out on. Like, what did you learn from it? And this also brings me to my point of everyone's very scared of reporting failure, right? Everyone's very scared that brush it under the carpet. But I think failure gives us the most important things to rework on. So I think that's also a big issue. I think, like, lastly, I'd also like to talk about this whole emphasis on quantitative. Give me quantitative data. Tell me first there was dropout of 15%. Now in 1 year there is dropout of 7%. Unrealistic, right? First of all, and then you can't really, like, what does these numbers tell you? So I think there is a very unfortunately, people don't give the same importance to qualitative data as they give to quantitative data. And quality is like, quantitative is the mind, but qualitative is the heart. And your mind can't function without your heart, and your heart can't function without your mind, right? So you need to marry the two, and that's extremely important on how you should be approaching assessment. Well, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Next, I would like to talk about tools for data collection, data analysis, and visualization. We mostly use Kobo Toolbox and Epic for data collection and Power BI for visualization and others. What are the most favorite tools that you are using right now?
Yes. So, I mean, we from the start have been using Survey CTO. Now, Kobo is great. It's very good for resource constrained organizations. But just today morning, like, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and he was giving me an example of how someone calls him and says, "I've lost all my data in Kobo Collect. I have to collect everything again."
Oh my
So
God.
sorry.
Oh my God. That's a
Exactly,
nightmare
exactly.
for impact assessment.
Exactly, right? So I think while it's great, it's important to invest in good technology, right? It's like anything, it's like any other technology. Good technology is important. So for us personally, we are also much more skilled in using CTO. We've been working with it for a long time. But any sort of data collection, moving on from pen paper, has my vote. So anything but pen paper is good, right? Whatever suits your budgets, what suits your capacities is fine. I do feel Google Data Studio is a bit easier than Power BI. It's from to learn it is much easier. So I definitely suggest. It's not, again, there is no point of data which lies in a folder or which you can't make sense of. It needs to be visualized, it needs to be used. And when I say visualized and used, it's not only for your top management to say, bravo, you've done a great job. It's for your program teams and your communities to use. So definitely would recommend using some sort of visualization tool which gets updated. I think AI has been a game changer. And I'm going to use a very simple example of ChatGPT. Of course, you can't use it for analysis, you can't use it for anything, but you can use it to make communication much nicer. People earlier in my team who were brilliant with, data collection, with analysis, but could not reach that last step of, communications. Now they're the best in my team, right? Because that barrier of, just simply writing something in a digestible way has been changed. So I think, and again, to concise a lot of information, to what we were talking about, how do you make infographics, short minute videos? It can help you make scripts, concise a huge amount of information into small. So I definitely say, I'm sure everyone is using now, but use it to communicate and make better, sort of stories that you can tell. And I think also cloud-based platforms, right? Where are you collecting? Where is all your data coming? And who has access to it? Not only a dashboard, but you can, pull it up at any point in time for any decisions. So yeah, I mean, there's so much technology in this space. And through this platform, I definitely like to highlight, if you think technology is expensive, it's really not. It can be, but there are ways around it. And if you think technology is difficult, there are ways around it too. It's like, I can teach you. You need to learn how to use a phone. Now which phone you use is different, but the fact remains, you need to use a phone, right? So with that, again, I just like to, again, be very solution oriented, that if you're not doing it, please do it. And take out these misconceptions that it's difficult and expensive, because there are lots of people who can help you navigate through those complexities.
Okay, I can understand. I also use ChatGPT and several AIs for communication and even sometimes for data analysis.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, I would like to go for ethical consideration. When we work with children or students, it's highly sensitive and who are below 18. So, what are the ethical consideration you follow, or which is a must ethical consideration we should follow during a data collection, especially during we are sorry we are dealing with the vulnerable communities.
Yes. So again, I'd like to go back to common practice. And most times, it's like we are like this automated robot, right? We read this consent form. I'm going to ask you this. Do you consent? I don't know how many children, especially, right, understand what they're consenting to. So at Fourth Wheel, we have a very standard process where we have three prongs to our consent form. One is explaining the reason for the research, right? We explain, we ask the kid, what did you understand? Right? So it's not a reading in 1 minute, your consent doesn't get over. So the person needs to understand, because that's also how they will give you much more better insight, right? So number one is, what is the project about? Number two is, where is this data going to be used? Whether it is a 10-year-old kid or a 15-year or a 50-year-old woman, doesn't matter. You need to tell them, how is your data going to be used, right? So I think consent forms need to be approached much better. It doesn't need to be literally a checkbox, right? You need to work with your communities and with your respondents to understand these things. And the third part is how long, what is this interview going to comprise of? How many questions? What are you going to talk about? So these three things need to be very well understood by your communities or your respondents. The other thing is, I think, a lot of times, and I've recently learned it, we only ask consent for the conversation we are having. And we go left, right, and center, take pictures of all the kids, then take those pictures, use them in the reports. Uh, just not cool, right? You need to get permissions on also photographs, on also videos that you take. Maybe the child is not able to give you that consent, but at a school level, if you're going to schools, from the teachers, from the principals, it's very important to sometimes we think, oh, we are putting the picture, that's a great thing we are doing. But I don't think you would like, in fact, there is a story of some time when my picture was put up somewhere and I was really mad. So we should treat our respondents with the same dignity that we would expect. So not just taking consent on the data you collect, but also on the pictures you take or how you use it, etc. I think so. From an ethics perspective, that's one very big piece. It's also very important to train your teams. There is one rule at Fourth Wheel where I have categorically told teams, you will not sit on the chair and the person will sit on the floor. That is in itself a power dynamic. That is ethically wrong, right? If that person is sitting on, there is that, that thing that I am the, Sarkari Babu, and then there's someone who's responding. So these small things, right, on your behaviors, on your body language, on how you treat people is very important, especially in our space. So these small things of, recognizing that you are not going to sit on a chair while someone's sitting on the floor and answering you questions. In fact, that person should be sitting on the chair because they are the ones who's, has a higher power dynamic. So I think training your teams is very, very important, that you need to respect people, whether they are, 5 years old or 55 years old. Respect for what you're asking and what you're going to do for them is very important. And also, I always recommend ethically to take back the data that you collect. Doesn't need to be, like I said, this huge, report, but it's very important that take some form to the very same people, or to at least, one or two people, take it back to the panchayat and share what your results were. Because a lot of people have told me, and, again, from my 16 years in the space, I hear the same problem. Ma'am, you take data and you go. What happens to data? What will you do with this data? And I want to solve for that problem. I train my teams and I train my clients to say that it's not good. How would you feel, right? I come take a survey from you and then I never show my face again in this life, right? So for me, and it's very important that we take the data back to tell them that, hey, this is what we found out and this is what we're going to do with it. It doesn't need to be with all the 300 odd people you've spoken to, but even to the sarpanch or to, the school leaders is ethically very, very important. So power dynamics, biases, body language, consent forms, all of these things, make for a good researcher, make for a good human being, and respect, the kind of people we work with.
Most of the NGOs are talking about sustainability. All the reports talks about sustainability. How we can assess the long-term sustainability? What is your experience on that?
Yes, I think one thing that we like, and I completely agree with you again from the study I've recently done, sustainability is the top thing that people define as social impact, right? But nowhere in our metrics will this sustainability piece come. That percentage of people who have the knowledge which government department to go to, percentage of people who have the knowledge, who are part of community groups to solve for their social problems, number of government engagements to ensure that what you have done in a community will sustain. The first thing to ensure sustainability is to not have it as an afterthought, is to build in metrics to ensure that when you are leaving a project, you know whether this will be sustainable or not. very good example is to ask people, will you continue to use this when you're doing your end line? Will you continue to use this? If it's an app, if it's a certain, even if you're building, if you're doing some sort of knowledge awareness, or, I can take some examples from who's present here. But metrics is very important to say, and your program should then focus on that. Lot of times we are focused on activity, and then we pray very hard to God that, okay, please let it be sustainable. But we are not working on the piece that we need this to be sustainable, with the knowledge that people have, with the means, or the systems that they have. So that's how I would approach it right from the start. Ensure that people have the knowledge, skills, and resources. It should be built into the KPIs, right? And then take qualitative feedback, clear feedback. Will this sustain or not? If it will sustain, why? Right? So then you know in phase 2 what you can do to move out. And if it will not sustain, then why? Another big piece, and there are certain NGOs that I simply love, is because their very program design is built with building community capacities. So an example for a health institution in urban Bombay is, they are doing work on, referral systems, maternal health, nutrition, etc. But they, from the start only, identify people in the community who they pay as employees, who they train. So that has a beautiful sustainability lens to it, because even if they are not getting paid by this program, the knowledge you have built, the capacities you have built of these people, you will be able to take that forward. Maybe not in a very formal way, but that is true sustainability. So if I have to put it in one line, to ensure sustainability of your programs, ensure you work closely with your communities where they are also implementing your programs, because then very low chances there that benefits will not be sustained, because you have built their capacities, their knowledge, and your program is then much stronger. So that's my thoughts on sustainability.
Thank you for that wonderful suggestion. Next, I would like to talk about the person who is overall aspiring to become a monitoring evaluation sector. Do you suggest, or what are the skills or experience as a person can attain for become an impact assessor?
Sure. So I think, in my team also, we talk a lot about this, and I really like this question. It's not a very common question. But I think, first of all, and I am also guilty of it, when we get into the impact space, right, we feel our job is all about finding problems. So, even if you look at reports, right, we use words like only, most of, um, and as humans, right, we tend to focus more on the bad than the good. So it's a soft skill, but I think the first thing that, anyone entering the space or who is in the space, stop looking at your job as finding fault. Start looking at your job as finding the good, right? And how you can improve that, and then looking at the negatives. So I just had to bring it up, because it's such a important point, right? If you take a positive attitude to how you can improve, and rather than that piece. So that's one. Number two, I said a lot about it in this chat, but solutions, right? I don't want to know data. I want solutions. So having this solution oriented approach. And how can you come up with solutions? You can come up with solutions by always reading, being well versed with trends, being well versed with technologies, being well versed with what other organizations are doing. If you go with this blinder saying, I know it all, you are never going to get the right solutions, right? So I think these are the soft skills, but very important. I'll come to the hard ones, but I think these are more important than hard skills. You can learn hard skills anywhere, but these small things make you a good assessor. So that's number two. Coming to, and lastly, from a soft skill, really being interested to listen to diverse communities. I always say this, but there's this one example. We went with this tool to do a needs assessment with migrant workers in a construction site, And we had our questions: do you have toilet? Do you have water? Do you have whatever? And then we did one participatory exercise where we said, you are going to get 10,000 rupees, where you will spend that money. And everyone, no one said toilet, water, nothing. Everyone said, we want fumigation drives because mosquitoes is a big problem. So, for me, that was an eye opener. And I give this example all the time. But being open to listen, if I would have not done that, I would have said, yes, please invest in one toilet, please put one RO water plant. But what was important for them? And that's, again, a very important skill, that I don't know anything. Their communities who live where they live, they know their reality, right? So I think these are three soft skills that that young professionals should know and should be very cognizant of. On the hard skills, I think three pieces. One is know your frameworks, right? There's lots of literature available. You need to know the different frameworks. You need to know sector specific frameworks as well as, overarching frameworks like TOC, log frames. I think it's very important. If you want to look at, there's also a host of resources that, are available when you start looking at impact frameworks. Happy to share that. You'd also find it on some of Fourth Wheel's blogs. So that's one. Two is data collection tools, right? And by that, I don't mean going and collecting a data. How do you make forms on Survey CTO, Kobo, whatever tools, technologies you all are using? That's a beautiful skill to have. And it's not, people would think it's common. It's not common. It takes, so, I think how do you make a good tool is also very important, using these softwares, right? Data collection softwares. I'd also recommend, for those of you who are interested, do at least one sort of crash course on Google Data Studio, Power BI, visualization, because that is the future. Concise information, how you visualize, how you get people to talk about it is the future. So data visualization is an important skill to have. Data analytics. Now my team is all moved from Excel to SPSS, and at least one person. Sorry.
No, I just said, oh, that's it.
Yeah, I said
Go on.
at least every one team member in a day will tell me, Sharon, SPSS is beautiful. It's so much better than Excel. So if not SPSS, at least start with Excel. It's very important in the impact space to be able to use. And I do a lot of interviews with a lot of people, and people say, yes, I know Excel. But honestly, when it comes to making pivots or when it comes to doing cross tabulations, very limited knowledge. So if you want to get into this space, number one, before everything else, please learn, Excel and SPSS. And lastly is communications. And how, communications people think is something you're born with. I really don't think so. The more you read, the more you see, the more ideas you get from, not just Indian context, global context, you can always, improve your comm skill. Because if, you can collect the best data, do the best analytics, but if you can't communicate that to stakeholders, it's all quite useless, right? So yeah, I think for someone, don't be scared, for whoever's listening and trying to join this sector. It sounds like a lot, but they all kind of they all feed into each other. And at least for me, I honestly love what I do, and all these three pieces, if you know it well, you'll enjoy your work even more. So yeah.
Correct. Whenever we talk about the impact assessment tools and many things, people are very terrified about the terminologies we use. When we say
Yes.
Power BI, SPSS, R, Stata, they will get terrified and no, you just take care of that. I don't want to
Yeah.
get into that. That's it.
Yeah, and actually, I think there's a session we are gonna do soon at Fourth Wheel. We do these social impact dialogue sessions, right? So I think that's my next topic. Like, don't be scared. I think that's gonna be my title. But I agree with you. Like, yeah, people get very intimidated by it, but it can be. It's like anything you learn, right? Even riding a bike can be scary at first, but once you learn how to ride, it's a skill for life. So yeah, I think it can be it can be synonymous with that analogy, you know. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you. You almost answered all our questions. Thank you for your inputs.
Sure, no problem.
I think Trifina will close this session.
Okay. That was a very beautiful, informative session. And to close the session, as we wrap up this enlightening conversation, we've journeyed through the fascinating experiences and insights of our esteemed guest, where she enabled us to recognize how impact assessment is crucial in providing a roadmap for the changes we aim to achieve. She also stressed on how impact is not a proving game, but rather an improving game. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today and blessing us with all your insights. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this insightful journey today. We hope you found the discussion as enlightening and inspiring as we did. Remember, the work of creating meaningful change begins with each of us, and by staying informed and engaged, we can contribute to building a better and more equitable world. Stay tuned. Stay tuned for more episodes of Out of the Box, where we continue to explore and amplify the voices of change makers and thought leaders. Until next time, keep thinking outside the box.